Hey everyone. Now, today I'll be discussing my report about EA program management, specifically on budget or investment planning. Now, the previous chapter examines the creation of an organization architecture management plan, which is a document that details how an enterprise will manage the transition of its existing processes and resources to those that will be required in the future, or the transition planning. Now, this transition from the current to the future enterprise architecture is a continuous process that occurs as a new resource are incorporated. And so it becomes part of the current enterprise architecture. Now, additionally, the purpose of the configuration management and version control is explained in the previous topic, as well as the importance of providing a sequence for implementation project. Now, in my report, we'll talk about investment planning. Now, but before we get there, I'd like to um, say that the enterprise architecture often provides business benefits in layers which are related to the maturity of the architectural capability and to major business drivers such as cost management, compliance management, risk management, and opportunity management, all of which contributes to the growth of the company, and to say it adds to um, their efficiency in handling different types of businesses or projects, because there are, let's say you are a startup and or legacy companies, there are so many things to consider, such as yung mga business models, expectations, and even regulations. Now, with all of those things, budget and investment planning is very important. Now, even at the enterprise architecture's earliest phases, there will be a pressing need for it to assist in managing and reducing the cost. Of course, everybody would want to look at reduction of cost and complexity of the organization system. Now, particularly in its information technology system. So to be particular of the IT systems. The objective here is to eliminate redundancy and duplication, of course, to improve consistency and the shared meaning across the company. Everybody involved in the EA, so the shared meaning, and to regulate the constraint and the spread of unmanaged and unrecorded point solution. Now, my report will revolve around the role of investment planning. Now, to be specific, the capital planning and investment control, or what we call CPIC. Again, it's capital planning and investment control. Now, or the CPIC process is introduced in this lesson, along with all the relevance to enterprise architecture and project management. Now, there are four phases of the CPIC, and we will talk about them as they are outlined in my report. And the chapter also will discuss how the CPIC process is used to execute a substantial portion of IT governance. So, in short, our goal is to understand the concepts of capital planning, understand the four phases of capital planning process, and understand how capital planning relates to enterprise architecture. Now, when we say capital planning, now this talks about the management and decision-making process associated with the planning, selection, control, and evaluation of investment in resources, including EA components such as systems, networks, knowledge warehouses, and support services for the enterprise. Now, this would detail, to be specific, the budget. We will talk about the budget for the EA program. Let's say the EA program by fiscal year and during its entire life cycle, allowing for the determination of the total cost of ownership, or TCO. Now, while the EA process is continuing, a 5-year lifetime term is recommended to compute TCO, now, or total cost of ownership. Now, in general, the costs to be included are those associated with the startup and operation of the EA program. The salaries and working condition of the EA team, of course, are included. The initial documentation of the EA, periodic updates to the EA, the development of the roadmap, which is very important, the purchase and support of the EA tools, and the development and maintenance of the EA repository. Now, the initial estimate of these expenditures serves as a reference point for funding EA programs. Now, spending throughout the life cycle, the expenditure should be compared to this baseline to ensure the EA program is managed effectively. So the setup baseline will be the reference point. Now, if the scope of the EA program is altered, a corresponding adjustment to the financing baseline should be made. In a project, of course, there would be certain adjustment, let's say a change of plan, or change of specific people involved. So those are factors, and those are points to consider. Therefore, there will always be an adjustment. Now, in this code, the EA program is only effective if the enterprise's resources are effectively applied to gaps in operational performance. So it takes people, money, facilities, software, hardware, training, and more resources to do this through investment in an ongoing series of development and improvement projects. So it is somehow, I'd say, it's a complex discourse to really be involved in an EA program. Now, the EA program will be effective only if these things are balanced in a way, and this really the case, and hence capital planning and project management are required to manage the continual transition from existing to the future architecture. Additionally, these processes assist the firm in maintaining strategic businesses and architectural alignment as it plans, select, controls, and assess investment in the EA component. Now, there is an analogy in here. So sa architecture naman, kapag pinag-usapan natin yung when we build a structure, let's say sa civil engineering, it says in here, for an architect's design to be approved, the owner's requirement must be met within the budget that is available. And I think that is fairly a common sense. Now, the architect must then work with a builder. So there should be a partnership to ensure that the design is properly constructed, that the schedule is met, and that the budget is not exceeded. So siguro sa side naman ng contractor or ng civil engineer or project manager, he needs to have different people, siguro people he know already or he knew already from the past, kasi the cost and their performance will involve certain adjustment in the budget. And we have to make sure that the budget is not exceeded. So because this is under a contract. Now, capital planning and investment control, or CPIC process, supports EA. So by the following: planning, selecting, controlling, and evaluating investments in new or upgraded EA components. This cyclic process promotes the attainment of the following. And it says there, it's a cyclic process. Identification of operational performance gaps in the enterprises, development of business cases, which is very important, that considers alternatives, alignment, and value. We have development and management of an overall portfolio in investment in the EA, and maximizing the value of individual investments in EA components. Encouraging a culture of learning by evaluating each completed investment. So in each of the process, there is an evaluation, and it keeps on updating, and this is a cyclic process. Now, to share with you the IT capital, or the CPIC phases. Now we have this, the project management plan, or the PMP. Now, and it starts with the planning phase. So it says here, requirements, business cases, project plan. The CPIC planning phase is where emerging business and technological requirements are evaluated. So at a high level, for their feasibility, because they have to be feasible, necessity, they have to be important, and linkages with an EA component. Those requirements considered to be of sufficient enterprise value and are then assigned to an EA component and codified in a PMP, utilizing industry standard templates for big and small projects. So it becomes a practice when it's been codified within the PMP, or the project management plan. Now, the same PMP includes specific information about the planned investment project, such as requirement, the business case, the work breakdown structure, the timeline, of course, the budget, or a budget, roles and responsibility, the scope of work, including stakeholders, roles and responsibilities, success matrix. Of course, there has to be a metric where we can measure the EA component that is being created. So, and a communications plan. The PMP is designed to be a dynamic document that is updated during a project's life cycle, from conception, from the idea, from the planning to completion. Once the PMP is complete and all necessary projects and investment information is gathered, the proposed investment project advances to the CPIC selection phase, which goes through the second phase. Now, additionally, this is where a cost-benefit analysis is conducted. So, yung cost-benefit, because it says here, funding selection and project sequencing. Now, the CPIC selection phase, or the selection phase, is where a proposed EA component investment is funded. The PMP evaluates the funding proposal for value. That's the first one. Alignment, business case strength, technical solution strength, security is also there, risk, and even in return, or risk and the return. Based on the PMP evaluation, or the project management plan, the company's management decides whether or not to invest based on available resources. So there is an identification of what are the available resources and should we invest or not. Some companies examine investment proposals on a quarterly or annual basis to coincide with budget and business cycle. Because many of the benefits of enterprise-wide IT solutions are qualitative. Qualitative meaning they are descriptive in nature. So calculating yung ROI is very tricky. For example, improvements in productivity, communication, record keeping, and morale, and even morale will be estimated in the dollar or in the dollar worth of the EA component that comprises the enterprise-wide email. So everybody is involved. As a result, organization should consider, of course, ROI with other factors when picking EA components. Now, the PMP or the project management plan is updated to reflect any revision to the implementation schedule and finance plan that may be required for that project to be activated under the sequencing plan of the EA management plan. So then comes CPIC control phase. So yung next phase natin would be the control phase. The CPIC control phase evaluates current development. So dito naman is more of evaluation, management of cost. Ayan, management of cost, schedule, performance, and risk. So yan, cost, performance, and performance milestone yan, kasama yan, are tracked by developing and managing baseline estimation. So an estimation is being made. This is the foundation of what we call the earned value management or EVM. Let me see if I can annotate. Well, anyway, it's EVM, a project management technique. This is a project management technique that compares planned, what the project plan is, to the actual return or the actual cost, and they are being compared. And of course, the performance data. Now, as project progress, it becomes more difficult to return to the plan or the baseline projections. Significant divergence in the first third of the project schedule should be identified to allow for recovery or resetting the baseline if new needs have been introduced that increase cost and or time estimates. Two factors which are very important, which is of course the cost and the time estimates, because we have to meet the deadline of the project. Now, this contains a work breakdown structure, or the WBS, project task list and timeline with the use of charts, or to be specific, a Gantt chart, which identifies the critical path information, or the PERT chart. So the EVM, or earned value management information, and of course the performance metrics. Now, it is interesting to note in here, performance metrics yon are those which measures the capability of the EA component that is being created. This could include yung database query speed, or database query speed, application refresh rate, yung refresh rate, website page refresh rate, usability, navigatability, peak network bandwidth, and interoperability. Now, risk, of course, is related to uncertainty and any potential obstacle to success in the project. Risk is always there. It is important to have identified risk or risk areas before the start of the project and implemented proactive and reactive strategies for limiting or mitigating those specific risks. Now, risk factors also include the use of new technologies, because new technologies means specific adjustments. The loss of key personnel, ayan, very difficult when you're working with someone and then suddenly that person is gone kasi yun nga, kilala mo siya. Not to mention, if you're working with person of different culture, let's say you're working with a Pakistani or or an Indian national, yeah, they are very difficult to, I mean, siguro, by experience, kind of difficult to work with, um, especially yung mga Indians. And well, I've worked with a few, and um, they can tell you that is easy, that could be, but delivering is such a great factor in project management. So yeah, new technologies, loss of key personnel, loss of funding, of course, the addition of new requirements, ayan, without increasing the amount of time money spent. Kaya yung scope and the scope of work is there. So insufficient testing, yan, prior to acceptance, lack of stakeholder buy-in, and insufficient training for end user and even the maintenance personnel. Now, let's talk about the last phase, which is the evaluation phase. Now, completed IT projects are in here, and they are assessed, and we learn from them. And running systems are routinely evaluated for value. Now, yeah, we evaluate the lessons learned, so it's in here for each project, and improve their ability to execute similar projects in the future. So if it's the same project nature, the lessons learned from the previous project or the current one must be taken into consideration. So a system becomes a legacy. Ayan. If it's incorporated into the IT operating environment. Now, yes, they are assessed. These are assessments that contribute to the value of the company and warrant extra operational maintenance and upgrade expenditure. Now, if a legacy system is deemed to be underperforming or duplicating capabilities, it is designed for phase out. Then we phase it out and we remove it. Maintaining an IT operating environment that is effective, versatile, and cost-effective or cost-efficient requires disposing of obsolete technologies. Now, let's talk about governance planning, governance and capital planning. Now, governance process or processes, including CPIC, are those that provide policy and decision making, and they should be overseen by some form of executive steering committee that is comprised of the enterprise's top executive. And these are the ones, these are the bosses, and yung accountability is very difficult to especially of course, project managers are meant to be accountable, and they are the high paying people in the project. They would dictate, I mean, of course, together with all the talent fees that they have, their experiences in the field, the projects they have accomplished in the past, all contributes to what and who they are on a project. Now, here are some of the terms I have outlined: CFO, CIO, LOB managers. Now, the chief financial officer, or yan, yung CFO of the enterprise, should manage the CPIC process in partnership with the chief information officer, or the CIO, and the line of business managers, or the LOB managers. So this sets these three, and the managers, the CFO, CIO, and LOB managers, they manage all of the major processes in the business. Now, because the CPIC is largely a financial investment decision-making process, the CFO should lead it, okay, or the chief financial officer. Nevertheless, it is critical in information-centric companies for the CIO to be a partner in the process, and these two executives to integrate the CPIC and the EA management process efficiently. So it's up to them, the CFO and the CIO. Now, CPIC decision should be taken at the executive level. So it has to be on that level. Now, it has to be that on the executive level by a capital planning board or the CPB. So there is a board and they are assisted by a capital planning work group. So under the CPB is the CPWG, okay, or capital planning working group, and an EAWG or Enterprise Architecture Working Group. So these are perhaps group of executives and project managers all um, performing these relationships, and somehow they have to strategically aim for the goals of the project. Now, here is the relationships of these people, okay, or we have the ESC. So the ESC is a policy making and decision making body at the highest level. Its purpose is to develop the enterprise's strategic goals. Ayan, nakalagay. Strategic goals and initiatives. Governance processes is included, and policies that will enable those processes to be implemented and integrated. Enterprise-wide governance of information technology use consists essentially of 6 processes that must function in concert to provide successful policy and decision making. They are yung strategic planning, enterprise architecture, capital planning, project management, security, and workforce planning. All are part of the Executive Steering Committee. Dito naman sa Capital Planning Board or the CPB is also of course a decision-making body. Yung distinction niya, the CPB assesses which among the investment or the projects to sponsor. They also evaluate completed projects for the lesson learned. Ano yung natutunan natin from the past, and determines if ongoing programs continue to provide value to the organization. So, alin ditong mga programs ang pwede nang i-phase out and i-obsolete na. So, that belongs to the CPB. Now, the CPB also creates a portfolio to aggregate, categorize, and manage individual investment in capital assets, including yung mga EA components. Now, this investment portfolio shows overall capital expenditure, provides portfolio level administration, and permits resource allocation away from low ROI areas. So they somehow yung mga low ROI or low return on investments. So sila yung nagpe-permit ng resource allocation para hindi mapunta doon sa mga mababa yung return of investment. Use general business categories such as operations, kanila yan, sales and marketing, finance and accounting, human resources, even R&D or research and development, and office automation. Now, achieving the correct balance of capital spending amongst category and weeding out weak investment is the goal or is the task of the CPB or the Capital Planning Board. In short, they do cost-benefit evaluation. They also should review yung mga investment proposal, current projects, and ongoing programs on a regular basis. Yun ang ginagawa nila. Each investment or new project and legacy program in the portfolio should be assessed annually or at an important schedule milestone. In addition to the CFO, members should include the CIO, program sponsors, and the managers. Now, how about the CPWG or the Capital Planning Working Group? Now, the CPWG assists the CPB. That is why in this chart, you'll see that the Capital Planning Board, it stems both the EA Working Group and the Capital Planning Group, meaning they work under the Capital Planning Board, hand in hand. And the goal is to assist the project managers in developing, updating yung PMP, yung project management plan, particularly yung mga business cases. They also provide documentation and business analytics. So kanila yon, and support to the CPB reviews. They also coordinate yung kanilang analysis with the EAWG. They also work with the EAWG. So they coordinate their analysis. They manage the repo of the CPB materials, yung repository ng Capital Planning Board. They manage yung repo nun. And the CPWG should be chaired by CPIC Portfolio Manager. Now, with project managers and other CPI stakeholders, of course, are all members. The CPWG should also have or should have support employees with expertise in strategic planning. The people involved should be knowledgeable as well with business analysis and project management and the planning of workforce. Additionally, yung CPWG conducts also cost-benefit analysis. They also do that. Now, the last but not the least would be yung EAWG or Enterprise Architecture Working Group. They also assist the CPB, just like what I said. They assist project managers in developing and maintaining PMPs, particularly those containing EA materials, providing documentation and technical analysis dun din sa CPB. They also coordinate their analysis dito sa CPWG. That is a two-way relationship, and coordinating with, of course, the CPB. Now, the chief architect should chair. There would be a chief architect. Ayan, medyo maliit yung ano. Doon sa CPWG, ang chair is a CPG portfolio manager. Dito naman, ang chair ay yung chief architect. Now, the chief architect should chair it, which should comprise project managers and EA stakeholders. Now, the EAWG support personnel should comprise members of the EA team and subject matter experts in information technology analysis at all levels of the EA Cube framework, security, project management, and configuration management. Now, in short, all of these people involved in the budget and investment planning are vital, and they have the control of the governance, the review of the good practices, and that would aid them dun sa company vision, mission nila towards attaining siguro yung mga continuous and best practices in the field. So I guess that's all for my report, and I hope that you have learned something. And yeah, thanks for listening, and I'll see you on my next report perhaps. So thank you so much.